welcome to Animator's Breakfast. This is a show where we talk about inspiration with different people who work in the animation industry. And today, really, really wonderful. I'm really happy, very excited to have him on. But I have Howard Wimshurst here. Great to talk to you again.
Yeah, round two. Let's do this. So this is how it's done. This is how a proper podcast is. I'm learning so much.
Well, it's lovely to have you here. I know this is our second time talking because you invited me on the Animators Guild podcast. Is it Animation Guild or Animators Guild?
Everyone gets it wrong, so don't feel bad. Yeah. But it is the Animator Guild podcast. Yes. Animator with an OR, yeah. Animator. But it's okay because literally everyone gets it wrong. So it's a curse.
Yeah. Well, my name handle, Animation, is, you think it's smart at the start, but then you try to explain it and you're just like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Why did I do this to myself?
No, I think Animation is a really good little play on words, I guess you could say.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, I like it. It's smart. It's cool.
Originally, it was... because I think I told you this before, but when I started thinking about doing the channel, I was looking at different video essays, and one of them was Every Frame a Painting, of course, which is a beautiful sentence, but it is quite a mouthful. And I was like, oh, that works. Well, maybe I'll call my channel Animation as a Medium. And my friends were like, how about no? Why don't
it doesn't have the same ring to it.
Yeah. Just shorten that down. I was like, okay. So I did Animation. But anyways, enough about me. For anyone who doesn't know Howard, I'm sure a lot of you do. I mean, his work is just phenomenal. As we discussed before, he's got the Animators Guild, which is a phenomenal resource for people. I know you offer courses, specifically one really phenomenal one called, Getting Started in 2D Animation.
Yeah, I just got the big one right now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Is that the big one? Do you have other courses as well, or is that the kind of main juicy big boy?
That is the big boy. And then I have a smaller course which was actually like a test to see if it would work. I was just trying everything out, and that's about just a very specific piece of effects animation.
Draw a circle.
I don't use that as quite as much, but I'm working on more courses, so it will not be the last.
Yeah. Now that you started in 2D animation.
Well, there's so much to it. There's so much I want to show people, and there's so much I get asked for. And getting started in 2D animation, well, that's just the start, right? That's just the start. And where do you go from there? There's so many places you can take it.
Exactly. Well, what I wanted to ask you actually is... I know, like, even looking at your course, it's so extensive, like the notes, the amount of work you've put into it. You even offer a handbook, and the assignments are really far ranging. There's a huge amount of work that's gone into it, but where do you decide to stop when it comes to including things as getting started? Where's the line?
Yeah, I think that's a really big question, not just for in this context, but as artists anywhere. People ask me, like, when do you know that a work is finished? And that is an answer that's unique to every artist. Like one artist might, their answer to that might be different from another artist. And it's a big part of your work, like when you will call it done. You got to call it done at some point though, right?
Yeah.
And, sometimes, when I'll go into like a tangent of something and then I'll say, but I mean, I could write a book on just that thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And if I can say, but like, there's just too much there.
Yeah.
Then I decide, that's like an idea for another body of work, and I'll take it there. But really, it's like, I think with getting started, I looked at the things that were around, because I'm not the only one who's making content around animation. And I saw that there was a lack of people wanted to animate, but they also needed to draw. They needed to learn to draw, and they knew that they needed to learn to draw. So that's one of the ways that I tried to set it apart, is that I actually did. I offer a big chapter. I call it a chapter, but a chapter sounds really small. It's pretty big. A section of it, a different word for a chapter, but in just the drawing part.
Yes.
So perspective, being able to draw a cube is a really big deal, I think, in an artist's journey. When you can draw a cube and you have a really good command over a cube, you can draw a lot of different things.
Yes, yeah.
And I use the example of Minecraft. You know, like Minecraft is all these rendered cubes, and then you can render entire worlds just from cubes. It doesn't work exactly like that, but it's a good way to just kind of show the power of that technique in a way that is kind of simple to grasp and easy to grasp. So there are things like that, and also filmmaking as well. Like seeing animation in the wider context of film, it's something that exists in film, and even further away from that, it's something that exists in entertainment and in culture. And so I actually I think I did more than was necessary, and people taking the course might be thinking, yeah, okay, right, can we learn the cool stuff now? But I just had to, I drew animation as like a space on the map, and then around it is other things. It's like, and this is part of film, and then film is also live action, and also, what is animation? It's the persistence of vision is probably the root of animation. If you think about it, you're not actually watching something move, you're watching a series of drawings which are creating the illusion of movement. So I wanted to really give a context to it, which actually took me years and to learn. And before that, I didn't have that idea of what I was stepping into with animation. And I think it's kind of a privilege to learn that and to know that the context of it, and try and set the stage so that maybe that's the difference between someone just maybe as a teenager finding this out and it's just a fad that you forget about in a year, and then maybe saying, actually, this is really special, I think I will look into this and really consider it. And I just want to do everything I can to encourage people down that path, because when I was in school taking my A levels, which is around the age of 17, 18 years old, I think, in the UK, I was doing animation. I was part of this community online called Newgrounds, which was the place to be as an animator back in the day. And I was just doing them for fun. I was joining tournaments, making animations. Very embarrassing looking back on them now, but hey. But I was going to be a geographer. I was going to study geography at university.
Wow. Yeah.
And this was something that I wasn't really that passionate about. I was interested in it.
Yeah.
I will say that. I was interested in GIS mapping, which is, if you look at Google Maps, how they send these little cars down all these back alleys in the middle of nowhere to map out a big map of the world that's updating. It's interesting, right? But was I passionate about it? Maybe I could have learned to be passionate about it, but the real thing I was obsessing over day and night was animation.
Interesting.
And
interesting.
I was lucky enough to have an epiphany on a day, and I remember the day very clearly, when a force took over my body when I wasn't concentrating, and it turned my head towards my mum and said, it spoke through my mouth, and it said, I'm going to study animation. I think I'm going to choose a career in animation. It wasn't me that said it, I don't think.
Interesting.
I'm not a superstitious man, but that's that's how it appeared to be. I wasn't thinking. My mind went blank. I was tired that day, and that's what I said. And then as soon as I said that, everything was right in the world.
Wow.
And I've never looked back ever since.
That's amazing. That's like almost as if your subconscious just kind of took over for a second,
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And just said, okay, this is it, guys,
Yeah. It knew in that moment exactly what needed to be said. And that's the best decision I've made in my life so far.
Wow.
I've made a few decisions that I think have been really good decisions.
Yes.
That's the
just
best
a few.
decision. Just a few. Yeah. Everything else I was coasting along. I was just, I was just in this big, I don't know what metaphor we could use, a river full of students who just get drifted along with everyone. Like there's this
I
current.
know what you mean. Yeah,
you just go along with the current. Yeah,
just the tribe around you. You just kind of get swept up by. I think that's a really good lesson as well, because I think it's a big mistake I made in college was not listening to that inner voice and just being allowed to be swept along.
Yeah,
and because when you're by yourself, you think, okay, this is great. I can do this and this. But when you end up back in the class or you're surrounded by your peers, there is kind of an overwhelming force involved in that kind of social situation. I think definitely it's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, there's like that. I think that's why it's so terrifying to when you graduate. The idea of graduation from university or whatever your highest level of education is that you decide to go down, it's terrifying because you've had this current your whole life and you've just been with the current, and then there's this abyss. It goes over a waterfall and there's nothing. You don't know. There's no one to help you. There's no one guiding you. There's no formula. There's no instruction manual anymore to life. And that's how I felt, at least. And then what happens is you end up making structures for yourself. You end up making these rules and these currents. You build your own current, and I suppose that's better than using someone else's. It's up to you at that point, though. But people need rules. People if they don't have rules, they find rules. They'll attach them. That's why cults are so that's why cults are a thing that pop up. They bubble up in societies, and it's exactly at those times people who have recently graduated are really susceptible to joining cults. And I think that it's that. I think they latch onto something. Anyway, it's just a big tangent. We're talking about Aleksandr Petrov today. Whiplash there.
Speaking of cults, not at all. But that's fascinating as well. Like, I mean, I think that's a really interesting, and I think a lot of people can probably empathize with that idea, of waywardness, and trying to find a cause or a calling and finding something bigger than yourself to believe in, and of course, some people are lucky like us where they find a passion that helps them through life, and that's something like animation, is when I was on your podcast, I think I talked a bit about it, of like, it's nice to have that anchor while you're swimming along in this kind of huge ocean of life. And speaking of swimming and anchors, let's talk about, well, you can introduce who you decided to talk about today.
Okay, I'm madly obsessed with this Russian reclusive artist called Aleksandr Petrov.
Amazing.
Now, I'm actually not even sure. I wasn't even sure when I told you that I'm choosing Aleksandr Petrov. I didn't know how to spell it, because I think there's like a Russian way of spelling it, and there's the like more westernized way of spelling it.
Yes.
I think you might have to write both in the description, because honestly, it's like half and half. When I look him up, some people use the westernized version, and
the difference in spelling, by the way, is there's just, I think from what I see anyways, there's Alexander, the Russian way just doesn't have an E-or at the end.
Doesn't have an E,
or doesn't have an E at the end. No.
Something like that.
Yeah, otherwise it'd be Alexander. And the Western way has an E, like we're more Alexander, whereas that's Alexander.
So this guy, it's hard to fathom how amazing he is.
Yes, yeah.
I continue to struggle to wrap my head around it. And the best part is, I think he's still like a hidden gem, because he's not on that many people's radars when we're talking about the greats of animation auteurs. I do believe he comes into that category of auteur, because I'll get into auteur theory in a bit. I think the way you'll recognize his style, I think, is that, well, first of all, it's breathtakingly beautiful.
Yeah, stunning.
I would class it as like artwork from Romanticism. I believe that's the art movement. Yeah, I think it's called Romanticism if you look up paintings of that kind of art movement. But it's film. He's animated it. He uses primarily his forefinger, and he has this light table, which is backlit, and there's a glass panel, and he will put oil paint down. It's this special translucent paint which allows light to shine through from behind.
Yeah.
And he will smudge and move about this paint to create his frames. Now, this is a destructive process, which is what sets apart this process from similar ones, because you can look up animation filmmakers like E.M. Cooper, and that one that you talked about, you showed me the other time. What's their name? The Irish studio that did the Bird and the Whale.
Oh yes, Paper Panther.
Panther, yeah. So those ones, they actually, Paper Panther is a destructive process that they use, I think, but it can be separated from some of those other kind of painterly stop motion processes, because basically you don't keep any of the frames, as it's a continuous animation method. So one of the principles of animation is continuous versus pose to pose. He only uses continuous, to my knowledge, which means that he starts at frame 1, he will paint frame 1, he will then erase where the character, if the character's moving, he will erase where that character was, and he'll paint the new one in. And he'll just do that again and again and again, using his finger, primarily his thumb and forefinger, to just smudge and move and manipulate the oil into these incredible, like, you've got to see it to believe it. You can't
100%.
You can't. I'm not doing it justice by using these superlatives. You need to see it. So please.
Yeah, stop right now.
If you can edit them in, or if you can link to some.
Well, yeah, I guess on YouTube I can clip some of the clips in, but I'll definitely have some links to his work in the description. You know, so if you want to pause now and go have a look at something like, you know, Old Man in the Sea, or, you know, Dream of a Ridiculous Man, or The Mermaid, any of this kind of stuff that he's done, just please. They're all exceptionally, I think most of them aren't longer than 20 minutes, you know, might be as long as.
They are short films.
Short films, and they are stunning. Yeah,
and then come back here to thank us in the comments.
Well, thank you. You brought it up.
Well, you allowed me to. You enabled me.
The enabler. I think for me, when I first came across Petrov's work, I think it might have been, he did an advertisement for Coca-Cola. With Santa Claus, and it's that very painterly one where the kids are like looking at him as he's drinking, you know, a Coca-Cola at the fireplace. But again, it's very hard to talk about this with words, you know. I mean, words really fail us all the time, but like, I think he said that he finds he paints with his fingers because that allows him to feel like there's no obstacles in his way, and he's much more connected to the image. Like, I think he said,
it's his body connected.
Yes, exactly.
I want to even take that further and say that, you know, we can look at this in a poetic sense. Yes. I'm going to put this on the idea, but like, you can see his fingerprint in every frame.
Wow.
In fact, everything is made out of his fingerprint. Now, the fingerprint is unique to every human body. There's a different one. And that is his. It's like, it's his through and through. It can't be mistaken for anyone else, because it's his fingerprint, and it's all made up of these little fingerprint marks. And it's his body directly onto this paint. And it's largely unedited. It's largely unedited. Nope, there's no Adobe After Effects. There's no Adobe Photoshop. No little touch-ups here and there. And it's very much in the kind of Russian style of things. You know, I do think that the Russians have this, well, maybe it's a stereotype, but this kind of fetish for hard work, it seems. And I've not seen many examples that prove that to not be true. And this is one of those ones that I was like, it does fit with the stereotype. But it's hard work to do this.
Super hard work. It takes him years, like I think 2.5 years to make Old Man in the Sea. And he animated that with his son, Dmitry Petrov. So it's him. So I remember looking at the credits of that short film, and it's like all these producers, all these sound engineers, all this extra stuff. and then animation 2 people, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Your mind is blown, because I mean, something like that is, and that's, I would say that's kind of in the middle of his career. If you look at kind of his short films and whatever he's done, like, it's a huge standout because obviously it's beautiful. There's subtleties to it. I know it won an Oscar, the best animated short as well.
I think that's our main kind of connection here in the West to knowing who he is, because I think that's because he won that Oscar. I think they did send a film crew out to actually come and see how he does it,
interview him,
and then they gave it English subtitles, thankfully. So I think that's the main way that we are able to see in, because otherwise it would just be like, who is this mysterious guy?
Yeah, completely guessing. And I like the way you described him as kind of a recluse, because that interview they did, with him, and they kind of followed him around a little bit in his studio and kind of had a peek into his daily life, is fascinating, because he's just
simple. He's a simple man. Yeah. He said he kind of aspires to be like a farmer. He really likes the idea of being a farmer. So he's kind of like salt of the earth, kind of.
Yeah, dedicated to his craft, guy.
Yeah, just like a very, very humble, simple man who creates these dreams. Yeah. He dreams, and he'll manifest these dreams into animation, and that is utilizing the medium like nothing else. And I know he has like a very his characters have photorealistic proportions. He's not really caricaturing that in that extreme like someone like Chuck Jones would. But then where he takes that, it means that he can continue to realistically render these things while they're doing amazing these amazing things that, going into these dream experiences. He'll often just melt away the walls of reality into these dream landscapes and these incredible camera moves. The character will suddenly grow wings and fly away. Or the letter that the boy has received, I think in the film My Love, he opens the letter and it transforms into a parachute or like a hot air balloon that carries him off. It's so romantic. It's beautiful, and this is how animation should be used, in my opinion. It's like the best way of using it. It's doing what you can't do with film. It's doing what you can't do with other mediums.
And as well, like, because he chooses, I think this is really key to my understanding of, or my connection with his work. I know that he takes he takes portraits of people he knows and puts them in the film. So like, I know in Old Man in the Sea, it was his his father-in-law. He based the old man on. But because they're so real, and I use that term loosely, like what we recognize as real, and there's such a devotion to detail in his films to how things move, secondary action. They talk about, I'll give you an example. You've even spoken about it before, when the line goes taut and strong in Old Man in the Sea, when it hooks onto the fish and it twangs in the air and the water flicks off it. He's able to kind of marry all this realism with that kind of melting, dreamlike metaphor transformations. There's if you want a really quick look at his transformation, I think he did the short work he did for Firebird, the Winter Olympics one. It's just quickly from point to point to point where, like, it could be someone sitting in a restaurant that transforms them into an elevator as the camera pushes away. Or I remember in, what was it, Dreams of a
Ridiculous Man.
Ridiculous Man.
I think that's what it's called. I might be wrong.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, Dreams of a Ridiculous Man. Where he, there's all these amazing things, like a tree transforms into a woman, and then the woman transforms into the sky, and the sky transforms into a pool of water, and the water then transforms into like a baby's cot, and the cot into flowers. And it's just this kind of constant flow state that his medium really allows to bring forward, because
it flows.
It just melts, but you don't.
It melts.
You don't notice it, but you allow it to happen because of, I think, the oil painting. It just naturally allows that to happen. Does that make sense?
He's a visual poet.
Yes.
And here's one of the ideas I had with this. It's like, it's emotional logic and it's emotional priority.
Yeah.
He will erode the physical boundaries of a space if emotionally it makes sense to, and it's very much told subjectively. And I love subjective filmmaking. I believe film is a subjective medium.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you cannot avoid that, so you might as well embrace it.
Yeah.
And he very sincerely will be telling the story from the character's point of view, whichever character he deems to be the main, the main character who it will be like within their head. That's why when they they fall asleep, they slip into a dream. It just keeps going, and it will. And in a dream, I think we're a lot more able to kind of we're unhinged from.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, the walls of reality just kind of melt away.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great way of putting it, because he just pushes aside things that will get in the way of someone's need to experience something.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really succinct way of looking at his work. I think that's really intelligent because I know he said as well that in choosing a work to make, it has to kind of reflect some nature of his soul, so he is putting himself in that person's mind to be able to kind of flow around like that. Like even in The Mermaid, where it's a really lovely dance between like this older man and this younger man and their interactions with, a mermaid in the water, and the old man's memories swirling into modern time and the kind of allegory that he brings with that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that he's just able to find a medium that matches exactly what he wants to say.
I know flow state when I see it. Like when I see it in some work, I'm like, oh, like he was in flow state. And I think everyone's experienced flow state at one point or another. Maybe not in animation. I've been lucky enough to experience the ecstasy of flow state in animation.
Wow,
and what happens is, whatever you are animating, you become that thing. It's incredible. It's like so if you're animating, like when he was animating the fish, I bet you he was the fish.
Yeah, I'd say so.
He was the fish.
Yeah.
that was him. Like his soul was in that, and that's what you get when you reach flow state, and you forget, you forget the context in which you're animating. You forget that it's a studio setting or whatever. You forget that you're hungry. You forget that your back aches, and you are that thing.
Your hand is cramping,
that's why I try and animate a lot of birds. Like, if there's an excuse to animate a bird, I'll animate a bird, because I love flying.
Amazing, yeah. I think that's fascinating. Like, I really do. It's funny you talk about, flow state and that he was the fish. I mean, of course, that's probably why he picked Hemingway's story, because, the line that, we are brothers now, we are, and there's that whole scene where he's like swimming underwater with the fish, but then the water becomes the sky, and all the creatures in the ocean are flying in the air, and you're just like, my God, like this is this is just beyond. He's just incredible. I mean, words can't really do it, but I think the reason maybe the reason he chose The Old Man and the Sea, and perhaps even I'd like to also compare him to another go for it.
Animator who is I'm incredibly I'm a big admirer of. So Old Man and the Sea is a particularly interesting one, because that is a film about an old man who takes on an extraordinary task that he doubts he'll be able to do. It's an inner battle as much as it's an external battle. It's about, he's trying to prove to himself that he can still do it, that he's still able to do it. Now, there is a very, very strong parallel between the story and the meta story. The story is the one written by Ernest Hemingway. The meta story is Aleksandr Petrov taking on this massive task. I don't know what the runtime of The Old Man and the Sea is, but it's
about 20 minutes. Yeah.
20 minutes. For one guy to make the visuals for 20 minutes, one guy and his son, sure, but I think it's probably him leading the way. He identifies with the old man.
100%.
He identifies with him.
100%.
So here's the part where I compare him to another amazing animation auteur, Frederick Back.
Oh my! I was so hoping you bring him up. Like, I mean, absolutely, yes. It
was a way up between Aleksandr Petrov and Frederick Back for this podcast episode.
I mean, the man who planted trees.
The man who planted trees, exactly.
Yes, and Crack as well. They're just yeah. Please continue.
So particularly with the man who planted trees. Okay, let's have a little look at the story.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, this guy hand drew thousands upon thousands upon thousands of frames, hand colored and drew.
Yes.
Over years and years with no immediate return on investment, no pats on the back, very little encouragement. He just worked in solitude. Now, the story of the man who planted trees is a solitary man who lives in the mountains somewhere in France, who decides to every day plant 100 trees, and it didn't matter whether the trees were eaten, whether the trees were blown, if the seeds were blown away on the wind, which often happened. He said, like, out of those first 1,000 trees, only half of them managed to make it to saplings. But he would do it every day. And with such meticulous care and devotion and focus as well. There's a big parallel there as well, and I think maybe Frederick Back was drawing strength from the main character that he was drawing. Like he was helping him in that impossible journey of making this film. And I wonder if he could have done it about anything else. He had to have chosen something that he really cared about. You don't see many films like that because there's such a hurdle to making a film like that. You can only do it if you go a long period of time, years and years of your life, without any pats on the back, without validation. And so it's very difficult, and that means it narrows it down to just a few people. There's a few people in the world. I'd say there's a handful of people who can do that kind of thing. That's two of them. The other one I'd say is Yuri Norstein.
Yes,
we've got to drop his name in there.
Absolutely, and, as well.
It's still a work in progress.
Well, of course, the overcoat.
The overcoat.
But Norstein's work as well, like Hedgehog in the Fog, is just lovely.
That's a great one.
It's funny actually. I think Petrov and Norstein worked on Winter Days. They both did segments for
collaborated.
It. Yes. Well, I don't think everyone did their own segment. I don't think they collaborated. Okay. But I know, like, Isao Takahata did a segment for that as well, and Mark Baker did segments for that as well. It's really interesting.
Winter Days.
By Kawamoto. I can't remember his first name.
Is that the one with the? Did Frederick Back do like? I might be getting them mixed up now, but like a sort of World War II battle scene.
No, I don't think it's in that.
That must be a different one.
Yeah, but I could be completely wrong. I need to watch it again. I just remember seeing it years ago and going, wow, this is just, it's so, because each segment is like a poem basically, and they each take a line or a stanza from a poem and go for it and just make their own thing. Like Petrov's one is basically this child living in rural Japan by himself, and a shadow of a crow appears at the door, and the child is just trying to scare it away with a toy, and it's only like 1 minute. That's it, But it's, again, like these are all really poetic filmmakers that understand especially Takahata as well. Like, I know we talked about this before, where that like art itself never has to be realistic. You know, it kind of transcends that. It kind of speaks to the ultimate mystery.
Yeah, that's when things get exciting.
Yes,
you know? And I think people could discredit people like Aleksandr Petrov for having impressive work. Like, that to me is an insult to him.
Well, I better not say that about your work either.
I mean, it is impressive.
Yeah,
but it's
of
more
course.
than that.
I know what you mean.
It's so much more. It's personal. Yeah. It's I aspire to have work like that. There's more than impressive. There's more depth to it than just like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
nice.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a pretty picture.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a good start. It's a good place to start.
Yes,
and sometimes I really struggle to just get there. You know, I have this process in the animation process, which is like, there's like an order of priorities, and the first on the list is to be understood. That's the first one.
Yeah.
So when I'm making the storyboard, I'm not trying to make it pretty. I'm not trying to make it anything. I'm trying to be understood. I'm trying to make it as understandable as possible.
Yes.
Then I'll try and maybe make it a little bit aesthetically pleasing, but the main thing after that is that I will try and make it subjective. Make it the subjective point of view. So if the character is feeling weak, we frame him from above. We put the camera above, and it makes the audience feel how the character is feeling. So that's very important to me, to make it subjective film. But just getting to the stage of making it understood, I struggle with. Just that. Just like, you know, communicating the bare bones plot is hard.
Yes, yeah.
Gotta be real with you. It's hard to go that many steps beyond that, to like to make it like, to introduce these themes which are timeless. I really care about timeless themes as well. You know, there's a lot to be said for relevance and for something being, you know, cutting edge, fingers on the pulse. I think something like South Park does that very well because of their production method.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. They're designed just to be topical, you know.
Yeah, they achieve it. You know, they are so quick to respond to what's happening right now.
Yes,
which is really impressive.
Yeah,
but I like that you can watch a film by one of these great masters, and you can watch it 50 years from now, 100 years from now.
Yeah.
And it will have the same, I think it will have the same effect. I think you can feel it because, you know, a lot of it is about the human condition, which doesn't really change.
Yes. And hasn't changed in thousands of years. And I know the last time we were speaking in your podcast about people like Joseph Campbell and how they went off and studied mythology and basically found the kind of the monomythological truth of that is humanity, you know, that these stories are, and timeless is a great word for it.
I love the word timeless. Yeah. That's kind of that's like a really big compliment I can give something. Yeah. It's like, it's timeless. Yeah.
There's a quote that comes to my head from Campbell, and I think it applies to certainly Petrov's work, which is, you know, this stuff that we're trying to talk about is just beyond all categories. The best things can't be told because they transcend all thought.
Yeah.
And the second best things are misunderstood because those are the thoughts that are supposed to refer to the things that we can't think about. And then, you know, all we get stuck with is the thoughts. And then the third best things are what we talk about. So we're already 2 steps away from talking about this, being able to describe this perfectly. But if you go and watch it, you get it, you understand it, and it comes through the visual metaphors on screen, whereas we can sit here and talk about it, but we're kind of struggling to find the words to put into place.
I think the words can reinforce it. I think, you know, it can like add some kind of reinforcement, and you can feel something intuitively. And then if someone puts a word to it, puts a name to it, then you're like, oh yeah, okay, you were feeling it too.
Yeah. and it acts as a guide as well as to, you know, someone's point of view as to where they're looking and what they're thinking about.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to tell people how to feel about a certain film. You know, I don't want to be like an authority saying like this is a good film, this is a bad film. You know, like that's so, and so many people, so many critics fall into the trap of doing that, and I think it's by and large not good. But at the same time, I love the movie experience of watching a film with multiple people and coming out of the film theater and then on the train journey home talking about it and discussing it and
digesting it
and saying, wasn't it amazing when that thing happened? And then it carries on into the house, into the kitchen, and you're sitting around the kitchen having tea, you know, maybe leaning up against the kitchen counter, just pondering on these ideas, this Pandora's box that's opened in your mind because of this film that's introduced you to this new idea. I love that. I love that too. I miss it. I remember some of my friends, we used to go to the cinema in Dublin, and then we'd wander across to this bar/restaurant called Kimchi, which kind of did Korean food, but also was an Irish bar. And we would just sit there and ponder and discuss and think and talk until the place closed, really, you know, because that's a real connection there, you know. It's like those nights in college where you stay up till 4 a.m. talking to someone. Yeah. And there's so much of like my criteria of like what I'm looking for in new friends and people I actually want to spend time with is more people like that who are open to doing that instead of just saying, oh, it's been 5 minutes, I better be going now. Yeah. Like, all right. Yeah. But the search continues.
Yeah. Off we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sitting by yourself.
Well, there's a good community here online with lots of people who are happy to talk about it. I just got to make sure that it doesn't. There are people who have come over to my channel who. And I've got to be careful here to not go into an angry rant. They are ranking things. Yes. Objectively.
Yes. Yeah.
And it makes me want to pull my hair out. And I'm aware that on some level I am definitely a hypocrite in that way. Yeah. Like I'm just like, oh, here are my top 10 favorite films. This is why I've put you know, V for Vendetta second to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and here's the reasons. You know, I am ranking things in my own mind as well, but you know, maybe it's just because I disagree with their choice of rankings. Like if they had the same ranking as me, and they're like, you totally get it, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is my favorite film as well, then I'd be like, I'm perfectly happy for you to rank these things.
It's just started on my channel as well.
Are you getting them?
Yeah, they asked me to set up a little thing to do ranking stuff, and I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. You know, it's no skin off my teeth. You can all talk and discuss, and you know, they do it by, you know, different directors, or they'll choose a studio or whatever, and you know, it's fine. But there's a reason why. I'm probably the same as you. Like, I never wanted to do reviews. And I never wanted to do like top 10 lists on animation or anything like that, because I just don't feel like A, I can justify it for myself, and B, I don't think I have the ability to review a film to the level that people expect. If I was to review something, it would end up being a discussion like this. You know what I mean? Rather than an objective kind of like, okay, 3 out of 5 stars. You know, I might do it in my head automatically when I watch something. I'm like, oh, well, you know, it didn't really speak to my soul the way other films have. But it's just something that I do shy away from big time, because I think as well, it closes you off from, well, I could be wrong, but I find it's tough to open up discussions then when you've put a very fervent opinion. No, that's wrong. No, ignore it. I don't know where I'm going with this. Ignore what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, I don't know where you were going with that, but
yeah, me neither. It's in the back of my mind somewhere, but I just haven't found it.
It did give me ideas though. So I think first of all we got to start with the base assumption that films are a net positive, as long as they're not like incitement of violence or hate speech or anything like that. I consider each film to be a net positive. And that goes all the way down to like, films that people consider to be, oh, it's so bad, like The Room.
Yes.
People consider that to be so bad, but it's brought so much joy into people's lives. I do not consider it to be a bad film.
No. Yeah.
Whether by accident or on purpose, it's a good film. It's a really memorable film.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I had a direct experience, a practical experience which taught me a lot of lessons in this, and that was when I became the host of the Animator Guild short film contest.
Yes. Yeah.
So I had first year of that, and
when did you do the first year?
The first year we basically gave everyone, just anyone was free to enter. It was completely free. They kept the rights to their films. It's just a way to encourage more people to make films. It's a good thing for the ecosystem, and has to be a minute or over in length. There's small prizes. Like, we couldn't afford big prizes. It's mainly the honor, of receiving, the first place or something. But you see, it's a contest, and someone has to win, and so there has to be a ranking system, and there has to be criteria. There have to be points out of 100, from 1 to 100. How well did this do? Straight away, there's a big paradox there. I am a believer that the ranking just doesn't make sense for art. Yeah. Doesn't make sense. Yeah. Doesn't work. But it's got to be done somehow. One way or another, we've got to come to the conclusion of who the winner is. What would you rather have as someone who's spent a lot of time, like a year, making a short film, and then it's like, I felt like giving this one the main prize. That doesn't make you feel that good, does it?
Well, yeah, as other contestants, sure.
Yeah, if I say we've got these different criteria, we're judging it based on the art, the animation, the originality, and the entertainment. Yes. And by the way, for this coming year, we've added another one, which is sound, because so many people neglected their sound. They had no sound. It was just... And sound is so important. You only realize it when it's done badly or when it's not done at all. But sound is so important. Anyway... So I had to, myself and the other judges, I brought on 2 guest judges, which was Hyun, who's been around for ages in the stick figure animation community. He's a great guy, really smart guy, really nice guy, and Astartes, which is his screen name. It's his. It's not his real name. I don't know his real name actually.
But his work is. Yeah, beautiful.
Like, he is incredible. Yeah. Just anyone who is wondering, just type in Astartes into Google. Especially if you're a Warhammer 40k fan, you will love it. But even if you're not, they are just
visually
cracking films. 3D, based in the Warhammer 40k universe.
This incredible knowledge of just cinematography, I think.
Really incredible cinematography, incredible action, choreography, sequencing, everything done flawlessly by one guy. And you think, no, surely this is a studio, this is a Hollywood veteran. No. And I really hope that Games Workshop has like identified him and has said, hey, can we like executive produce you to make something for us, like officially? Because if they're not, they're just
they're wasting.
That's such a waste of like, they've got to identify that opportunity. Anyway, so myself and these 2 judges have to come to the conclusion of, not only first place but second and third place and everything. And we had this point system, and it worked well. And I do believe that I'm happy with the way it turned out. There were some great entries, and they deservingly won high placement. And But here's where I made the big mistake. I will fess up to this. I'll own up to this. I decided that in the contest, in the video itself, I would show the rankings. So I would show, you know, this scored this much for originality, this much for entertainment, this much for art, and this much for animation.
Yeah.
Even if you get 99 out of 100 for something like animation, it's like... yeah, they marked me down.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
They took a point away for something. Nothing's gonna be adequate apart from 100 for all of them. And I think, in retrospect, we should have had the point system, not disclosed it, just had that privately, and said that, hey, we've got this point system of how we're judging it. Here are the placements. Yeah. Like, here's where everyone placed in the contest. Because I just think, I don't know, it kind of promotes, it encourages that kind of categorization that we've been talking about that we don't really like. Yeah. And but I couldn't see another way when I did it. I didn't know how else to do it. We have to justify somehow we have to justify why first place is first place and third place is third place. And my friend actually gave me a really, really simple solution, which I was just like, it hadn't occurred to me somehow. Yeah. But he just said, why don't you just say for each one, when you're talking about each entry, just say the thing that they did really well. Yes. You know, name the quality. Yes. Yeah. And just ignore any kind of deficiency you think it might have. Just ignore it because it's net positive. And I was like, why didn't I think of that before? Yeah. It's so obvious. It's so simple. Yeah. So yeah, that's what we're doing for this year. I think so many people, you probably got one as well. I mean, you can talk about this, but like, do you, because I know I do, do you have a film that you think, it's a one-day film, like one day I might make this film. I've got this idea, probably never going to make it. Or I got this idea, maybe when I'm better with my current skill level, then I'll make it when I'm much better than I am now. And that turns into a never. Yeah, well, it definitely turns it into a never. You're right. Tomorrow is, one of those never words. Yeah. It's really smart because it gives people confidence, and confidence is something generally that you only get from other people. You can be happy about your own work or something, but when someone comes up and says, oh yeah, that's good, then you actually truly start to believe it. Yeah. Like you can constantly doubt yourself. Oh, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure. But then when someone says, oh yeah, no, I liked what you did there, then that kind of gives confidence in that. And that's really as a mentor, as a guiding principle, that's really the best gift you can give someone is just that little bit of confidence. So saying, hey, we really love to see your short films, that's confidence that you're giving someone. And that's a really wonderful thing to have. It's a really nice thing to give to people. And it does complete the cycle. I do believe that film and animation should be seen as a conversation. Yes. And so you need someone who's listening or someone who's watching, someone who's experiencing it. Otherwise, the statement is not completed. It's like sending a message in a bottle. If you're stranded on an island, if that bottle ends up sinking to the ocean floor, it's like, man, that's a tragedy. That's a real tragedy. Like, that whole thing was in vain, that effort. So, I mean, it's important. The audience aspect of it is like, who's going to hear this? Who's going to watch this? It's very important. Yeah, big time. I mean, you don't just watch it to look at it yourself, I mean, some people do, though. Some people say that. They say, I'm making this for me. I'm not here to say they're wrong. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. You're allowed to, you know. I think every filmmaker makes it for them, though, but they want the discussion, like you said. I don't really know. I don't want to speak for like every filmmaker. I know there are filmmakers out there who I've talked to who say, I'm making this for me. I'm not making this for anyone else. I'm making this for me. And I'm not one of those filmmakers. Like I want to have an impact. I want to help in some way, and there's nothing that gets me more excited than using my ability as someone who can make films. I have the capacity to make films. I've made films, and and to use that as like, I don't know, like a superpower to actually affect something, instead of it being like this. There's a word beginning with M that I'm not going to say on this podcast, but it has 1, 2, 3, 4 syllables. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's kind of like that otherwise. It's a bit rude of me, but I don't know. It's otherwise it's like, I think it's kind of sad if it doesn't go outside of that. I understand that like the individual is a person, and you're allowed to make yourself feel happy. You can do whatever you want to do that makes yourself feel happy. That's cool, but there's so much potential in communication. It's a communications art.
Yeah, it is 100%. I mean, it always falls under communication as a category. You know, if we think about that in context of that idea of someone like Petrov, let's say, who is very reclusive, you know, very simple man, but still puts his work out there all the time.
Yeah, I think there has to be something. His films are very personal to him.
Yes,
but there has to be something in the back of his mind that's letting him know, hey, other people are going to watch this. Yeah, let's do a really good job on it and make it really, you know, really entertaining, really, really lovely. Yeah. Because it is, you know, I think there is consideration there in his work for the whoever's going to watch it. You know, otherwise it just wouldn't have the same effect. I don't think he'd be more indulgent in things that don't have as much universal appeal.
Yeah, much more experimental in some of the work. Possibly, I don't know. It's hard to know the mind of someone who doesn't do a lot of interviews. Yeah, you know,
we're making a lot of guesses. Yeah. You know, he unfortunately he can't be with us. He can't speak English. So.
He can't. Yeah. Funny you should say he's here right now. Actually, let's get him on the line.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah. I'd probably faint.
Oh, yeah. He isn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. But I love the way you talk about film. Like, I mean, one thing that, I mean, it comes up all the time in my head when I listen to you speak is, you know, Howard, your passion for animation comes across really hugely. And it's not just animation, like you appreciate the variety of forms. You're very open-minded in thinking about new things. You never just kind of sit on what you've learned. You know,
it's a little bit restless,
yes,
isn't it?
Yeah. But there's a great quality in that.
I hope that restless nature won't like get in the way of me making something, you know, that's big like this. Honestly, like,
would you sit down and plant trees for 20 years?
It's no easy task. It's not easy to. It's more the idea of like sitting still. I like right now my preferred length of animation to do, at least commercially for clients, is between like ideally like 10 seconds of animation. Because then it's just like
you can move on.
Just an explosion of like my best, bringing my absolute best A game, and then move on to something else and do something completely different, and try and hop about. Like, I've done a very diverse range of things recently. I worked for a pharmaceutical company to create visuals for their it's a new type of cancer treatment. So that's like one thing, but then I also did like a YouTube video intro for this guy who's like an R&B singer, and it's so different. It's like completely different, but I love that. I love that I can hop about and travel and stuff. But planting trees in the metaphorical sense, you know, planting a forest full of trees it requires you to have that dedicated focus, and that could be the hardest thing of all. Do you think that an optimism comes through that dedication of focus? You know, the kind of idea to study life, be able to recreate that I'm struggling for words here, but to recreate not just your observations, but your kind of emotional connections on and through your work. I don't know. I think that this is like it's definitely just a theory, but I've noticed that people, as they get older, they have a greater capacity to focus on one thing. So it might be that I'm just young right now. I'm 26 years old. To some people that's old, and to some people that's
very young.
Really young. It depends. It depends who you are and what perspective you're looking at that from. But I think maybe I'll have a greater capacity to focus on something, and maybe that's about just, you know, whittling things down to the core of what you find important. And there's all this stuff that you like that you might have seen on, maybe you were scrolling on Instagram and you saw it and you were like, oh, that looks good, maybe I'll try that style.
Yeah.
And then you realize, actually, it's nice, but it's not what's important to me. And like, I think maybe that's on a greater scale, that's something that an older artist is able to do more than a younger artist. I recently made a video about just talking, kind of discussing about the personality that comes with age, specifically, and how like, there's certainly an attention span thing, and it's something that that's the battle for me.
Interesting.
It's a battle for me I don't get artist block, where I think the typical idea of artist block is where someone does not have the energy to make something for a while, or there's also called burnout. There's another thing called burnout, which is like after a big project they don't have the energy, and I haven't experienced that. Maybe that's just because I haven't worked on a big enough project, perhaps, but I've worked on some pretty big projects compared to what some people would see. Like, anyway, where was I going with that?
You tell me.
Yeah, I'm getting way too distracted, but I don't get that, but I do get this kind of restlessness when working on a big project, especially you know, if I'm like a month away from finishing an animation project, and I just start coming up with all these ideas of things I want to do as soon as I get out of this project, and it's torturous. It's really like, well, the way I solve it is just by daydreaming. So I'll just daydream of what I'm going to do when I get out of this project, and it could be a really lovely project, it could be really fun, but I'll just be so restless on it. So that's something I think I have to quell. It's like an inner battle. It's like a spiritual battle, like a battle of the soul. These guys, you know, Yuri Nornstein, Frederick Bach, Aleksandr Petrov, you can add some more names to the list, but those are the ones that are coming to mind. Their souls are so strong. They are strong souls. And I kind of aspire to have that, the soul to be really strong. And I don't have that yet. I still care a lot about the petty things. I think most people do. And it's rare that you find someone with that kind of strength of will to see their vision through to the end when their vision is really big. And, you know, that's something that is, if you have that, you can do things that no one else can do. And I think if you don't have it by default, which is most people, I think it's possible to forge it. I think you can strengthen it. You can reinforce it by hard work, probably. You know, that would be my guess. I'm gonna try.
Well, I think to be able to create something like, let's say 29,000 frames for Old Man in the Sea, you definitely need a strength of, or persistence of character, you know. Persistence, to get through something like that.
Maybe finding the small rewards in just finishing a frame and just being like, that frame felt good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I think that's one way to do it as well. To just if you do that, if you see that as lots of little wins, and you genuinely enjoy drawing a frame, I think that can really, really help. In fact, I think that might be like your lifeline.
Yes.
On a big project.
I think you're right. Yeah.
You know, I think that might be.
I know. For me, when I worked on kind of bigger projects, I was lucky for, let's say, the last TV show I was working on. I had a lot to do, and they were all so vastly different that it was easy to move on. Do you know what I mean? So one day I could be making all these kind of screen graphics for, you know, MI5 or something, and the next day I have to do background graphics for a news broadcast or something like that.
That's great. Yeah.
And it's so vastly different that your brain has to like completely switch gears and just, but it gives you it's almost like having a cup of tea in between, because you have to give yourself the time to stop and think and consider the new, like how you're going to approach this next thing and what the design aspect of it is, the design approach. So that gives you that moment to kind of, I remember just sitting there in the office sometimes just staring out the window. Everyone else is running around and I'm just staring out the window having a cup of tea going, I wonder what this should look like, And it gives you that kind of freedom of, that's nice. And it's a little thing where you just tick the box. I had all these Post-its with like things written on it that littered around the edge of my screen, and I tick a box and move on to the next one, tick a box, then take the Post-it off, put it in the drawer, and by the end I had this huge stack of Post-its, and it's just like, okay, well that's I've done it, that little dopamine hit to just kind of get through it all.
Yeah, it's like doing one thing at a time really helps on a big project to break it down.
Yeah, one step at a time up the mountain, they say, or one tree at a time, one little seed.
One tree, like planting one seed.
One thing I did want to talk about with Petrov is, I really love when you talked about the idea of his thumbprint on screen. I just love the idea that because it's destructive, you're literally, the next frame, you're moving, he's pushing the paint around again. And sometimes you really see that paint pushed around beautifully.
That's actually something I really wanted to talk about, because he's actually... Because I've looked through his frames just frame by frame.
Yeah.
There's a lot of frame blending on them. I'm not sure if that's because of the way people have uploaded them to the internet.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that they did because there are quite big jumps between, and it just helps to smooth things along.
Yes. Yeah.
But even with the frame blending, you can see that there's paint that exists from one frame to another. It's the same paint.
Yeah.
So that means that he actually moves the same paint around from one frame to another.
Yeah, just pushes it around. Yeah.
That's extraordinary. And that's why, when you see him smudge things, sometimes the pose will just be moved. It won't be redrawn.
Yes.
In frame by frame animation, we redraw it. We have a fresh sheet of paper put down on the light box.
Yeah.
And we redraw it all again. That's nice. It has a nice quality to it. But this is slightly different because it's the same paint that's being nudged around.
Yeah.
Which partially kind of explains the flow state that he's able to enter.
Yeah.
Because it's not starting again from scratch and considering where are the proportions or where's the structure this time. It's just like moving it.
Yeah.
But it's also those lovely motion blurs that I love. On every frame.
On every frame, it's like memory.
It's giving a little hint of where it's been.
I remember when I was watching The Cow, which I think was one of his first short films.
Love it.
You can really see the little movements that the cow is making as it's being kind of walked down the train track. You can literally see the kind of push from frame to frame, of the legs being moved. But within that as well, I don't know. I just don't know how he maps this out. I can't speak to anything but like
I don't know.
Just to be able to capture the energy of a cow and its specific movement while just pushing paint around.
Yeah.
It speaks beyond like my brain capacity to understand the planning of that,
And it's not like these films are just like visually amazing paintings that have a little bit of movement that's a bit stiff. That's what you would imagine like a moving painting. Like these things are so fluid. They are moving so fluidly and so freely. They can move in any direction. They have all the principles of animation: squash, stretch, easing, arcs. They've got it all in there, and it's a painting, and it's updated light rendering. So like the lighting updates when he moves his head around. Like he's painting these things. Do you know how hard it is to render lighting on something
accurately?
Let alone moving it. Let alone everything else that goes in. He's multitasking so much there. Well, it seems like multitasking. I don't know how he does it.
I don't know either. And it's good. Like when we talk about lighting, is a huge part of his work as well, because a lot of them open in the dark, with a lantern or something that's just there.
Yeah.
swaying. So it's, you know,
that lantern, I love that opening,
and it's just like
yeah.
the conversation between, you know, the dark spaces and where the light is. I know in Old Man in the Sea, when Santiago is setting out to the ocean and he's a lantern, and you see the kind of light blue of the sky behind, or the dark blue of the sky behind him when the sun's starting to come up. Like you just see the silhouette of his hat, and then it's black, and then the light cast on his body as to where the lantern is shining on parts of him, and he's moving around, and you're just like, yeah, I like connecting. Anyway, you know, blah blah blah.
I think some of it is just can be put down to this guy's done his research. Like he has gone out and shot reference footage. He has done his due diligence, which a lot of animators don't. That, you know. And part of that is like deadlines. People have a deadline and they're just like, right, I got to just jump straight into it. I'm the same. But I think he does his research. He'll collect loads of photographs and stuff.
Yeah, I hope so.
And he'll study it, right? Because that's how you, I guess, achieve that kind of level of rendering. But also, he's a fantastic draftsman.
Yes.
Like just his drawings alone, when you see them, you know, because we saw behind the scenes of of The Old Man of the Sea. And just those sketches, the quality of those sketches is like Rembrandt or John Singer Sargent. You know, it's like that level of like, ooh, that's a nice sketch. Yeah, I'm completely fanboying now. I'm just in fully.
And take it away from the pencil and put it on your thumb and finger and move the paint around.
Yeah.
You know, there's one, is it, I think it's in The Dream of a Ridiculous Man, when he first enters the kind of dream and he's walking around on the sand and he kind of slips and you see the sand move into the hole where he is and how it moves. But it literally just looks like a thumb smear pushing it down. But it also, I remember the first time I watched it, it tricked me into thinking there was particles of sand moving, just the way it was achieved. And I was like, oh, wow. You know, that's a real, like you said, due diligence. Oh God, why can't I say it? Due diligence. Due diligence.
I can't say it now.
Due diligence. Due diligence in how someone has, like I said, gone out in the world and just seen things and studied it and looked at things.
It's part of the magic of animation. It's like, is it a thumbprint or is it is it a stack of sand or is it both? Yes. It's both at the same time. It's at the same exact time you can see the thumbprint, but your mind can also just your mind can also see what it is, the impression of what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like you can see both of them at the same time, and that's part of the magic of it. The thing that that just astounds me again and again. And it's satisfying no matter who you are. You don't need to have a Bachelor of Arts degree to understand why that is amazing. Anyone can look at that and just say, my gosh, it's a moving painting.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I think I showed this to my dad. I showed I showed The Old Man in the Sea to my dad, who's also an artist. He's a stained glass craftsman.
Oh wow.
He makes stained glass panels. And he said it's like a painting, but it's moving. And I said, no, Dad, it is a moving painting.
Yes, yeah.
The paint is moving. He's moved it. And yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. So anyone can.
Yes.
And I think the more you watch it, the more appreciation you'll get for it as well. It gives you more on repeated viewing. Yeah. And maybe on the first time you see it, you'll think one thing, you'll think, wow, that's so pretty. And then on the second time viewing it, you'll think, wow, I really related to that young boy. Or, you know, you'll think something else every time. And, you know, you can come back to it again and again and enjoy it. And also it's universally appealing, I think. I think you can show it to any age range. You can show it to any... Well, I haven't experimented with this, but you can probably show it to any ethnicity and they'll probably find something amazing about it. And so it's got universal appeal. It's got there's another word, along with being timeless, there's this word I used, which I learned from a teacher, which is universal truth.
Yes.
And that's we partly see that in the human condition.
Yes.
We see that, you know, there's just like, maybe it's like the way someone reacts to something that's just genuine. It's like really
honest,
genuine.
Yeah.
And when you see it, it's like, Oh, yeah, that's the truth right there.
And I think that comes because I know he said as well that, like, I mean, he is really attempting to understand another soul through his work, and there can only be honesty through that lens that you look through when you're so open to looking at someone else and trying to understand their point of view. The things that kind of pass through, at least in my experience, are those honest moments where you're like, oh, I've done that, or I can see how they've gotten there because I've nearly gotten there in a similar way before.
Yeah.
And about connecting those, like you said, universal truths through that character and that space that they're showing on screen.
Yeah, I think he's interested in that. He's also, I mean, I think The Dream of a Ridiculous Man was written by Dostoevsky.
Yes. Yeah.
So very, very famous in literature, and also, you know, The Old Man and the Sea was by Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah.
So these are like really acclaimed writers who are looking at the human condition, and also looking at philosophical kind of debates and thinking about the meaning of things. So I think he's very sentimental in that way as well.
Yes, yeah. I think he said he's very sentimental, actually. He's a sentimental.
Yeah, he kind of said it as like a confession, like, oh, well, I guess I'm sentimental after all. I was like, dude, you're definitely sentimental.
100%.
Like, your films are so sentimental.
Yeah. Especially about life.
There's so much about emotion.
I mean, it's easy to look at some of the earlier works, like The Cow or something, and think it's kind of like there's a darkness in there, but really there's a kind of a beautiful sentiment that rests within something like that. You know, like the nurturing life of this cow gives this child and the family and everything around it. And it's more a study of this idea that life, even if it's short, is better than an eternity in paradise, which I think is part of the reasoning behind The Dream of a Ridiculous Man. I think it's Dostoevsky's, I don't know the word, but it's his message behind the work is like life progresses forward all the time anyways, and there's beauty that comes with that if you just stop and look and take it in. You know, it's not all bad out there. Yeah,
I mean, with the cow and with that film, I think it's called My Love.
Yes, yeah.
And both of them kind of look at the character is at a certain point of time in their life.
Yeah.
And to me, it sounded like, this is great because we're thinking different things here.
Cool.
You were looking at the cow with like the sort of life being finite, and there's beauty in that. There's kind of closure in that. And definitely the way I'm looking at it is like it's a time in the boy's life.
Yes.
There's So with the cow, it's a very young boy who's kind of learning things about the world and perhaps learning about death for the first time. You know, sorry about the spoiler, but the cow dies. Sorry. So, you know, it's a very simple story about this boy who grows up in a kind of quite a poor farmer's house with his mum and dad, and finds a cow, and they raise the cow, but then the cow unfortunately dies, and he has this kind of premonition about the cow dying.
Yes.
And then with My Love, it's about this teenager. He's 16 years old, and he's kind of torn between this this other girl who's 16 years old and this older woman who's like, she says in the film, like, oh, I'm so much older, I've experienced so much about the world, and I'm 25 years old. That made me burst out laughing because I'm 26 years old, and I just think, like, not that old.
Isn't it? Well, you've got a lot of experience in those shoulders, you know. That's good thinking. But anyways, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. But like, they could almost be, the character from both of them could almost be the same person. At different points in their life. Could almost be. They're not, because you know, I think the boy's from quite a privileged upbringing and things, but it's exploring, you know, I think especially with the one that My Love is definitely experiencing that kind of when you're at that age, 16 years old, as a boy, you're finding out these ideas about love and about women. You're learning about women for the first time. And he's very candid in that, and he's very sort of he's showing the inner thoughts of this boy and the fantasies of this woman who's seen from 20 meters away and immediately
totally
rushes into these fantasies. Immediately gets these fantasies about running away with her and onto these boats in these islands, exploring and everything. And it's just like pretty accurate. Yeah, it's pretty accurate to how a 16-year-old boy thinks, how they think and how they feel about certain things. And he's not. The funny thing is, like, I was kind of laughing at it.
Yes.
But he wasn't. And he wasn't judging the character. He was the character.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's actually something you kind of taught in acting class. Not that I am an actor. I'm a terrible actor. If you got me to act, I wouldn't be able to do it. But, I'm interested in acting nonetheless. And so I read books and stuff. And one of the things they teach you is to not judge the character.
Yes, don't judge.
You can't laugh at your character and simultaneously, authentically play the character. You can't do both at the same time. Same for like a villain. If the villain will believe in their own logic that what they're doing is the right thing, they will believe that what they're doing is justified in some way, even if that justification is I felt like doing it.
Yeah.
That's a strong enough justification for that character to do that thing. And so, like, it never felt like he was laughing at the character. It felt like he was saying, I feel you there, man. I love this woman too, this complete stranger. I love her too, because you do.
Yes.
And this is where we'll go with it. That I'm completely swept away in that daydream, just like you are. Hard to do, and until you try it for yourself, it's you might not understand how. I say you, like theoretically, whoever the audience is. Like if you try it for yourself, you'll find how hard it is to kind of. To not judge, to withhold your judgment, and to just
to open your heart as well, like to understand someone like that. It's very hard to.
It's an amazing thing,
It's hard to keep your heart open like that, especially in a world that constantly, applauds cynicism. But one question I wanted to ask you was: it's interesting that when it just popped into my head when you talk about the kind of difference in the age of the two, kids from the cow up until the teenager in My Love. But one thing that I see as a thread throughout his work is definitely like this dualism of youth and age. Like in The Dreams of a Ridiculous Man, there's a whole dichotomy between him and his child. In Mermaid, there's the old man and the younger man, the same with the old man and the sea. What do you think about that? Like, do you have any thoughts on? Yeah,
I think there's definitely, like, speaking as a creator here, someone like who's thinking about, how would I go about making this and doing that. I think that it's a very strong tool to have as juxtaposition. That's the word you would probably use.
Yeah.
Juxtaposition is like, oh, we got an old character. Now let's play that character off of someone who's very young. And it's because you're looking for conflict. When you're making a film, you're looking for, like, if you have like an old character and then a slightly old character, it's less clear the differences between those two. And really you want to show it in its most visceral form. The differences, if it's an age thing, you want to show the differences in age, or if it's if it's between masculine and feminine, you want to show someone who's really masculine, hyper masculine, and very feminine, and just as a general principle, I think. But it's I don't know the reasoning that he had, but I know that for me it's like it's good storytelling.
Yes, yeah.
It does, there's nuance as well, but I think that's not where the nuance is found.
And I think it also speaks to being able to, like, I mean, if he says that he's trying to find, something that he understands in each character, he's able to, understand someone else's soul. I think from my perspective of it, if you put in someone older and then marry it with someone who's younger, it allows not just a conflict, but like you said, the juxtaposition of different mind frames at a certain point in time. Like in The Mermaid, where the young man starts to fall in love with this mermaid, and then the older man is having a flashbacks of what it's like to be in love with this and tries to interrupt.
Yeah.
Well, he sees the danger in what's happening.
Yeah, you get these two opposing... You get these two different reactions to whatever the circumstance is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a hypothetical, but you could say, like, you know, if there's a young character and they see someone die, they could be like, someone's died. This is you know, like, I'm distraught. This has messed me up. And the old guy could say something completely different. The old guy could say, like, I see death every day. This is nothing new for me, or something like that. You know, and then from that you get some meaning. You get some kind of lesson there. Yeah, and that's very much what I tried to do with Encounter, one of my short films. I'm going to bring this back to me. I kind of realized, you know, I can't have too many characters in this film because it's just going to take too long to draw them all. So I'm just going to have two characters and I'm going to make them very different to each other. Yeah. And that's going to be juxtaposition. So you have one that's kind of representing a certain type of culture, and then you have another that's all the opposites, more or less. And then I kind of crash them together. You just sort of you cause them to collide.
Yes, and see what happens.
And it's amazing what happens from there. Yeah, everyone wants to see what happens when you do that.
Interesting. That answers my question.
But that's just my take on it, though. I don't know. I think there's quite possibly some symbolism that I haven't seen in Petrov's work. I think with maybe the ones where he's telling the literature, like Dream of a Ridiculous Man and The Old Man in the Sea, I think he loves those sources, and he wants to... He mainly wants to create an experience around them. He wants to turn them into visuals, and the best visuals that can get across the ideas from the authors. I believe that's what he was doing there. Yeah. And I don't know with the others how much of a say he had in the story, or, you know, whether it's purely just written from his mind, or if he's basing it on something, if it's based on his own experiences. I'm not really sure.
It is, it's hard to know because we don't know that much about him. You know, he's very reserved and very quiet. I know he does have a website, but there's not much on it, you know.
Does he?
Yeah, he does. He does.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up.
He has a show reel, and his son is a show reel as well, because they often work together.
They're not fan edits, they're actually uploaded by him?
It's on their website.
Wow. Okay, I gotta find
I'll send you a link. I'll try and refine it and send you a link, and hopefully it's not a fan website and I've been duped. It's funny, actually, on his website he's got a picture of him and Frederick back there together, which makes absolute sense.
Dream team.
It makes so much sense. I mean, they both worked in Canada at very similar times, so it makes sense that they would have met.
I need to do some more digging. I mean, I was mainly on the research for this, I was mainly just watching the films, you know. But and I was thinking, if he asks me about the date on which any of these films are made, I am not going to be able to answer.
Don't worry, I have the dates. I wouldn't put you in the spot.
I'd be like, that's your job. My job is to ramble.
But yes, I think we could probably leave it there, Howard. That was a really interesting discussion. Yes, so.
Even though we could talk about it forever. For more, but I mean, I think my voice will give out at some point. Yeah.
But, well, mine too. I'm going to have a drink of water now. But listen, Howard, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again. And thank you so much for coming on this. They're phenomenal. There were such fascinating and interesting points of view. I'm going to be thinking about this for a long time now.
Oh, great. I think I will too. I'm so glad I got to express this to someone who would listen. You know, I don't think I could say this stuff to any of my family members. I think they'd tune out after 5 minutes.
Well, listen, as you know yourself, you're not a prophet in your own land, unfortunately. You know. But listen, thank you so much, Howard, and
thank you so much.
I'm just going to stop recording now.
This has been so fun.